It was just another Tuesday evening when Major General Denise Carter pulled out of the Pentagon parking lot. Her body ached from sitting through endless meetings about military operations overseas. All she wanted was to get home, kick off her shoes, and have a quiet dinner with her husband. The drive through the Virginia suburbs was peaceful. Streetlights were starting to flicker on as the sun dipped below the horizon. Denise had made this same drive hundreds of times over the past 3 years. She knew every turn, every stop sign. Then she saw the flashing red and blue lights in her rearview mirror. Her first thought was confusion. She hadn't been speeding. Her registration was current. She had done nothing wrong. Still, she pulled over smoothly, putting on her hazard lights and placing both hands on the steering wheel. This was second nature to her, just like her military training. Officer Derek Mitchum stepped out of his patrol car and approached her window with a swagger that immediately put her on edge. There was something in his body language, something aggressive that didn't match a routine traffic stop. "License and registration," he barked, not even offering a greeting or explanation for why he'd pulled her over. Denise kept her voice calm and respectful. "Good evening, officer. May I ask why you stopped me?" "Just give me your documents," Mitchum snapped back, his hand resting on his belt near his weapon. She reached slowly for her purse, explaining each movement. "I'm reaching for my wallet now. My military ID is in there as well." She handed him her driver's license, registration, and her military identification card that clearly showed her rank. Major General, United States Army. Mitchum barely glanced at the military ID before letting out a dismissive laugh. "Yeah, right. And I'm the president. You got a real ID, or are we going to have problems?" Denise felt her heart rate increase, but she maintained her composure. 25 years in the military had taught her how to stay calm under pressure. "Sir, that is my real identification. I'm a 2-star general stationed at the Pentagon. My credentials are legitimate." "Step out of the vehicle," Mitchum ordered, his voice rising. "Officer, I have every right to know why you've stopped me. I haven't violated any traffic laws." That's when things escalated quickly. Mitchum yanked open her car door. "I said get out of the car now." By this time, neighbors had started coming out of their houses. Someone across the street had their phone up, clearly recording. Denise could see curtains moving in windows, faces pressed against glass. She stepped out slowly, her hands visible. "I'm complying, but I'm requesting your supervisor." "This is inappropriate." "You don't get to tell me what's appropriate," Mitchum shot back. He grabbed her arm roughly, spinning her around against the car. "Hands behind your back. This is completely unnecessary. I am a general in the United States Army. I'm not resisting. There's no cause for—" The cold metal of handcuffs clicked around her wrists, cutting off her words. The humiliation burned through her like fire. She had commanded thousands of troops in combat zones. She had briefed presidents and foreign leaders. She had earned 3 Purple Hearts defending her country, and now she was being treated like a criminal on a suburban street for absolutely no reason. "On the ground," Mitchum commanded, pushing her shoulder downward. "You cannot be serious," Denise said, her voice finally showing strain. "I said on the ground." He forced her down onto the pavement. Her knees hit the concrete hard, then her chest, her cheek pressed against the rough, cold street. The indignity of it was overwhelming. She could hear gasps from the neighbors watching. More phones were out now, recording from different angles. A woman's voice called out from a nearby yard. "That's General Carter." "What are you doing?" "She's a general." Another neighbor shouted, "We're recording this." "We're all recording." Mitchum seemed to realize he had an audience, but instead of backing down, he doubled down. "Everyone stay back. This is official police business." Denise lay there, handcuffed on the ground, her mind racing through protocols and procedures. She had been in dangerous situations before, real combat zones where bullets flew and lives hung in the balance. But this felt different. This felt personal. This felt like hatred. Her uniform jacket was getting dirty. Her shoulder throbbed where Mitchum had grabbed her. But worse than the physical discomfort was the psychological assault of being treated as less than human. "Officer Mitchum," she said quietly, reading his name tag from her position on the ground. "You're making a serious mistake. I am fully complying. I have identification. You have no legal cause for this treatment." "I'll decide what's legal," he responded, standing over her with his arms crossed. Traffic had started to slow on the street, drivers craning their necks to see what was happening. A black SUV pulled over and a man in a suit got out quickly. He was white, middle-aged, and looked like he might be a lawyer or businessman. "Officer, what's going on here?" "I know this woman." "That's General Denise Carter. She works at the Pentagon." Mitchum turned to face him. "Sir, I need you to get back in your vehicle." "This doesn't concern you." "It concerns me when I see a decorated military officer being treated like this for no apparent reason." More people were gathering now, a small crowd forming at a safe distance. Their phones created a semicircle of recording devices, all capturing every moment. Denise could hear someone on the phone with 911, reporting the incident. Another voice was calling the local news station. The situation was spiraling, and she knew that what happened in the next few minutes would matter enormously. "Officer Mitchum," she tried again, keeping her voice steady despite the rage and humiliation boiling inside her. "I am requesting your badge number and the name of your supervisor. This stop was without cause and your actions are excessive. I will be filing a formal complaint." "You're not filing anything," he sneered. "You're under arrest for resisting and failure to comply." "I have done neither of those things, and everyone here is witnessing that fact." Finally, after what felt like an eternity but was probably only 10 minutes, another patrol car arrived. A sergeant stepped out, taking in the scene with wide eyes. He recognized Denise immediately and his face went pale. "Mitchum, what the hell is going on here?" "Got a suspicious person, Sarge. She had fake credentials." The sergeant walked over and looked at Denise's identification cards, which were still lying on the hood of her car. His jaw tightened. "Mitchum, get her up. Get those cuffs off now." "But sir, Now, Officer Mitchum." "That's an order." As the handcuffs came off, Denise stood slowly, brushing dirt from her clothes. Her wrists were red with marks. Her dignity was bruised, but her resolve was hardening like steel. The sergeant approached her carefully. "General Carter, I'm so sorry. This is completely unacceptable. We'll sort this out at the station." Denise looked him directly in the eye. "Yes, Sergeant. We certainly will." She got back into her car, her hands shaking slightly as she gripped the steering wheel. Around her, neighbors were still recording, still watching. The story was already spreading through text messages and social media posts. By the time she pulled into her driveway 20 minutes later, her phone was exploding with notifications. Her husband rushed out of the house, having seen a neighbor's Facebook post. "Denise, are you okay?" "What happened?" She sat in the car for a moment, letting the reality sink in. She had just been handcuffed and forced to the ground for no reason other than a cop's prejudice and ego. But she was a general in the United States Army. She had resources, credibility, and most importantly, she had witnesses and video evidence. This wasn't going to be swept under the rug. Not this time. Not with her. As she walked into her house, Denise Carter made a decision. This wasn't just about her anymore. This was bigger than one bad traffic stop. This was about every person who had been treated this way without her rank, without her platform, without her ability to fight back. The battle was just beginning, and the general was ready for war. The first video hit social media at 7:43 p.m., just 20 minutes after the incident. It was shaky footage from a teenager's phone, but the image was clear enough. A black woman in business attire, face down on the pavement, hands cuffed behind her back. An aggressive police officer standing over her. Neighbors shouting in protest. By 8 p.m., 3 more angles had been posted from different witnesses. Each one told the same story from a slightly different perspective. Each one was being shared hundreds of times per minute. By 9 p.m., someone had identified Denise Carter. The tweet went viral almost instantly. "That's Major General Denise Carter, 2-star general. West Point graduate." 3 purple hearts. And a cop just threw her on the ground like a criminal. The internet exploded. Denise sat at her kitchen table, her laptop open, watching her own humiliation spread across the digital world. Her husband stood behind her, his hand on her shoulder, squeezing gently. "You should turn it off," he said quietly. "Don't torture yourself watching this." But she couldn't look away. The comments were rolling in by the thousands. Most were supportive, outraged on her behalf. But some made her stomach turn. The racist trolls came out quickly, saying she probably deserved it, that she must have done something wrong, that she was playing the race card. Her phone hadn't stopped ringing. Reporters wanted statements. Fellow officers from the military were calling to express their shock and support. Civil rights organizations were reaching out. It was overwhelming. At 10:17 p.m., the Pentagon's official phone lines lit up. The duty officer called Denise directly, his voice apologetic. "Ma'am, we're getting slammed. Hundreds of calls per hour demanding answers. The secretary's office wants to know if you need anything." "I need the truth to come out," she replied simply. "That's all." By midnight, every major news network had picked up the story. CNN ran the headline, "Two-star general handcuffed during traffic stop." Fox News led with, "Military general's arrest goes viral." MSNBC brought in legal experts to discuss civil rights violations. Denise finally closed her laptop at 1 a.m. and tried to sleep, but rest wouldn't come. Every time she closed her eyes, she felt the pavement against her cheek again, felt the handcuffs biting into her wrists. The next morning brought no relief. The story had grown overnight. International news agencies were covering it. The video had been viewed millions of times. Her face was everywhere, that moment of humiliation frozen in time, repeated endlessly across screens around the world. Officer Derek Mitchum's name was public now, too. People had dug into his background, found his social media accounts before they were hastily deleted. Screenshots showed questionable posts, jokes that rode the line of racism, shares of content that raised eyebrows. By 9 a.m., the police department held a press conference. The chief stood behind a podium, looking uncomfortable in his pressed uniform. "We are aware of the incident involving Major General Denise Carter. Officer Mitchum has been placed on administrative leave pending a full investigation. We take these matters seriously and are committed to getting to the truth." The reporters weren't satisfied with that carefully crafted statement. Questions flew from every direction. Was there any cause for the stop? Why was the general handcuffed? Is this part of a pattern? Will there be federal charges? The chief deflected most questions, promising transparency, while offering few actual answers. Denise watched the press conference from her home office at the Pentagon. She had come to work despite everything, refusing to hide or show weakness. Her colleagues weren't sure how to act around her. Some offered supportive words. Others seemed embarrassed, as if her humiliation somehow reflected on all of them. Her direct supervisor, Lieutenant General Raymond Hayes, called her into his office mid-morning. He was a fair man, someone she respected, and his face showed genuine concern. "Denise, how are you holding up?" "I've been better, sir." He nodded slowly. "The secretary wants you to know that we support you completely. This is unacceptable. We're coordinating with the Justice Department on a potential civil rights investigation." "I appreciate that, sir. We're also prepared to issue a strong public statement on your behalf if you'd like." Denise considered this carefully. "What I'd like, sir, is access to the body cam footage, all of it. And I'd like the department's complaint records for Officer Mitchum." General Hayes shifted in his chair. "Denise, you should let the official investigation handle." "With respect, sir, I am the victim here. I have a right to see what happened through that camera." He couldn't argue with that. By afternoon, she had the footage. She watched it alone in her office, door closed, blinds drawn. She watched herself being pulled over, watched the immediate aggression from Mitchum, watched her own calm responses, her compliance, her professional demeanor. And she watched herself being forced to the ground despite doing everything right. But then she noticed something else. Throughout the stop, Mitchum's body cam had accidentally captured parts of previous videos in its saved folder on his dashboard computer. As the system buffered, brief snippets of older footage appeared for split seconds. Denise was trained in intelligence analysis. She knew how to spot patterns. She requisitioned the full archive of Mitchum's body cam footage through official military channels, citing the ongoing investigation into an incident involving military personnel. What she found made her blood run cold. Over the past 18 months, Mitchum had made 47 traffic stops. Of those, 39 involved people of color. The white drivers were typically let go with warnings. The others faced aggressive treatment, excessive questioning, unnecessary searches. There was the Hispanic man pulled over for a broken tail light that wasn't actually broken. The black teenager questioned for 20 minutes about where he was going and whether the car was really his father's. The Asian woman asked repeatedly if she understood English. None of these incidents had resulted in formal complaints that went anywhere. Most had been logged as routine stops. A few complaints had been filed but were dismissed as unsubstantiated or resolved through counseling. Denise compiled the data methodically. Stop dates, demographics, outcomes, complaint dispositions. The pattern was undeniable. This wasn't about one bad traffic stop. This was systematic. This was a cop who had been doing this for years, protected by a system that looked the other way. She created a detailed spreadsheet, organized the video evidence, documented everything. Her military training had prepared her for this kind of analysis. In combat, you had to understand your enemy's patterns to counter them effectively. This was a different kind of battlefield, but the principles remained the same. That evening, a reporter from the Washington Post managed to get her personal cell number. "General Carter, would you be willing to go on the record about what happened?" "Not yet," she replied, "but soon." Her husband found her in her home office late that night, surrounded by documents and laptop screens showing video footage. "Denise, you need to rest. You've been at this for 16 hours straight." She looked up at him, and he saw something in her eyes that made him pause. It wasn't anger exactly. It was determination. It was the look she had when she was planning a military operation. "This isn't just about me," she said quietly. "Mitchum has been doing this to people for years. People without my rank, without my resources, without my credibility, and nobody stopped him because nobody with power cared enough to look. What are you going to do?" She closed her laptop slowly. "I'm going to make them look. I'm going to make them care. And I'm going to make sure this never happens again." The next morning, Denise requested a meeting with the Secretary of Defense. She also reached out quietly to the chair of the House Judiciary Committee. She called the local NAACP chapter. She contacted the ACLU. She was building a coalition, assembling allies, gathering evidence. This was strategy. This was warfare. The Pentagon's Public Affairs Office wanted her to stay quiet, to let the investigation run its course, to avoid making waves that might embarrass the military or create political complications. But Denise Carter hadn't risen to the rank of two-star general by staying quiet when things mattered. She had earned her stars through courage, competence, and the willingness to make hard calls under pressure. This was the hardest call of her career, and she knew exactly what she had to do. The videos kept circulating. The outrage kept building. Support poured in from unexpected places: veterans groups, police reform advocates, former military commanders, regular people who had experienced similar treatment but never had a platform to speak about it. A week after the incident, Denise received a call from a congressional aide. "General Carter, the committee would like you to testify at a hearing on police accountability. Would you be willing?" She didn't hesitate. "Yes, absolutely yes." When she told her supervisors at the Pentagon, the response was mixed. Some supported her courage. Others worried about the political implications, the potential backlash, the way this might affect military-police relations. "You could be ending your career," one colonel warned her privately. "Is this really the hill you want to die on?" Denise looked at him steadily. "I've literally been on hills where I could have died, defending this country and its values. If standing up for justice ends my career, then maybe that says more about the system than it does about me." Denise Carter wasn't the type of person to act on emotion alone. 25 years in military intelligence had taught her that feelings without facts were useless. So while the rest of the country debated her viral arrest on social media, she was doing what she did best: gathering intelligence. Her home office had transformed into something resembling a war room. 3 monitors displayed different data streams. File folders covered her desk, each one meticulously labeled and color-coded. A timeline stretched across one wall, tracking incidents by date and outcome. She started with Officer Mitchum's records, which she had obtained through official military channels. But she quickly realized that his pattern was just the surface of something deeper. Using her security clearance and connections throughout law enforcement databases, she began mapping complaints filed against the entire precinct. What she found was disturbing. Over a 5-year period, 247 complaints had been filed. Of those, only 18 had resulted in any disciplinary action. And of those 18, most were simple reprimands or mandatory training sessions that officers sat through and promptly forgot. The complaints themselves told a consistent story: racial profiling, excessive force, unlawful searches, false arrests. The names changed, but the script remained the same. There was 63-year-old Thomas Wright pulled over for driving suspiciously in his own neighborhood. Turned out he lived 3 blocks from where he was stopped. The complaint was marked unfounded. There was 28-year-old Angela Rodriguez, stopped while jogging because she matched the description of a suspect. No suspect report existed for that day. Her complaint was dismissed as a misunderstanding. There was 19-year-old Kevin Jackson, a college student held for 2 hours while police searched his car for drugs they never found. His complaint was closed with a note that the search was procedurally appropriate. Each case on its own might seem like an isolated incident, an unfortunate misunderstanding, an officer having a bad day. But together, they formed a clear picture of systematic discrimination. Denise created a database cross-referencing officers, complaint types, and outcomes. She discovered that 12 officers in the precinct accounted for 70% of all complaints. These same 12 officers covered for each other in incident reports, gave corroborating statements that seemed rehearsed, and were defended consistently by their union representatives. It was a closed system, designed to protect its own members regardless of their actions. But the most disturbing discovery came when she examined the complaint review process itself. Cases were investigated by internal affairs officers who had close relationships with the accused. Witnesses were often not interviewed at all. Video evidence was frequently dismissed as inconclusive, even when it clearly showed misconduct. And complainants were sometimes intimidated, subtly discouraged from pursuing their cases. One woman had written in her complaint that an internal affairs investigator had told her, "Are you sure you want to go down this road?" False accusations against officers can have consequences. The system wasn't broken. It was working exactly as designed, protecting officers at the expense of the community they were supposed to serve. Denise's husband brought her dinner on a tray one evening, finding her hunched over her laptop, eyes red from hours of reading reports. "You're running yourself into the ground," he said gently. "When's the last time you slept more than 4 hours?" "I can't stop now," she replied, taking the plate absently. "Every case I read is another person who was treated like I was. Except they didn't have my rank or my platform. They complained and nothing happened. The system buried them. And you think you can fix the system?" She looked up at him, and her expression was fierce. "I have to try. Because if someone with my credentials and connections can't get justice, what chance does a regular person have?" He kissed the top of her head. "Just don't forget to take care of yourself while you're taking care of everyone else." The next phase of her investigation took her into even more uncomfortable territory. She started reaching out directly to people who had filed complaints. Some were hesitant to talk, burned by their previous experiences with authorities. Others were eager to share their stories, grateful that someone finally seemed to care. She spoke with a father who had watched his teenage son be roughed up during a traffic stop for talking back. She listened to a grandmother who had been pushed against her car while police searched her vehicle for no reason. She heard from a veteran who had been denied the basic respect he had earned serving his country, treated like a criminal during a simple traffic violation. Each conversation broke her heart a little more. Each story reinforced her resolve. But her investigation wasn't making her popular. Word had leaked about what she was doing. Some people praised her thoroughness. Others accused her of conducting a witch hunt, of being biased against police, of using her position inappropriately. The police union issued a statement. "It's unfortunate that General Carter is choosing to politicize an incident that is under proper investigation. Her campaign against dedicated officers serves only to damage police-community relations and put officers at risk." The blowback came from unexpected places, too. Some of her military colleagues privately expressed concern. She received a carefully worded email from a Pentagon lawyer, reminding her about regulations regarding public statements and political activities by military personnel. She was walking a fine line, and everyone knew it. One afternoon, she received a visitor at her Pentagon office. Captain James Morrison was a young officer she had mentored years ago. He was white from a law enforcement family, and he looked deeply uncomfortable as he sat across from her. "Ma'am, I wanted to talk to you about what you're doing." "Go ahead." "Captain, my father was a cop for 30 years. Good man, honest. And what you're doing, ma'am, it's painting all officers with the same brush. It's not fair." Denise leaned back in her chair, studying him. "Tell me something, Captain. If you knew that a soldier in your unit was abusing civilians during deployment, would you cover for him because he wore the same uniform?" "Of course not, ma'am." Would you expect other soldiers to stay silent about his misconduct out of loyalty? No, ma'am. That would be wrong. Then why should police be any different? I'm not attacking all officers. I'm identifying a pattern of misconduct and a system that enables it. The good cops, the ones like your father, they should want this fixed just as much as anyone. He thought about that for a long moment. Some of us do, ma'am. But it's complicated. It's only complicated if we make it complicated, Captain. Right and wrong are pretty simple concepts. We teach them to children. After he left, Denise felt the weight of what she was taking on. She wasn't just challenging a few bad officers. She was challenging an entire culture, a brotherhood that protected its own regardless of the cost to the community. Her investigation revealed another troubling element, the manipulation of records. She found incident reports that had been altered after the fact, complaint files with pages mysteriously missing, video footage that was accidentally corrupted or lost due to technical issues. The more she dug, the more sophisticated the cover-up appeared. This wasn't just individual officers making mistakes. This was institutional. She compiled everything into a comprehensive report. Data analysis, case summaries, timeline charts, video evidence, witness statements. It was 147 pages of damning documentation. Her hands trembled slightly as she printed the final copy. This report represented a point of no return. Once she made this public, once she testified before Congress with this evidence, there would be no going back. Her career would be forever defined by this moment. That evening, she sat with her husband on their back porch, the thick report between them. "You know what happens if you do this," he said quietly. "They'll come after you. The police unions, political allies, maybe even people in the military who think you're causing trouble. This could cost you everything you've worked for." "I know." "And you're still going to do it?" She looked out at the fading sunset, thinking about all the people whose stories filled those pages. People who had no voice, no platform, no power to fight back. "When I took my oath as an officer, I swore to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I swore to bear true faith and allegiance to the same. That oath didn't come with exceptions. It didn't say I should only defend justice when it's convenient or politically safe." He took her hand. "I'm with you. Whatever happens, I'm with you." She squeezed back. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Not of the backlash. I've faced enemy fire. I can handle criticism. I'm scared of what it means if I don't do this. If someone with my position and resources won't stand up, who will?" The next morning, Denise hand-delivered copies of her report to 3 places: the Secretary of Defense, the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division, and the House Judiciary Committee. She also sent a copy to the police chief of the department where Mitchum worked, along with a cover letter that was both professional and pointed. "This is not an attack on law enforcement. This is a call for accountability. I hope you will receive it in that spirit." The response was swift and divided. The Justice Department opened an official civil rights investigation. The Pentagon expressed support but urged caution and discretion. The meeting room in the Pentagon was unusually tense. Denise sat at a long conference table, flanked by military lawyers and advisors. Across from her sat the Secretary of Defense, 3 members of the Joint Chiefs, and several senior officials whose expressions ranged from sympathetic to deeply concerned. Secretary of Defense William Patterson cleared his throat. "General Carter, we've reviewed your report. It's thorough, I'll give you that. But we need to discuss the implications of you testifying before Congress." "I understand, sir." "Do you?" One of the Joint Chiefs, Admiral Stevens, interjected. "Because this isn't just about you anymore. This affects the entire military's relationship with civilian law enforcement. It affects political alliances that keep our budget flowing. It affects things you might not be considering." Denise kept her voice measured. "With respect, Admiral, I've considered all of that. What I'm not willing to consider is staying silent when I have evidence of systematic injustice." Secretary Patterson leaned forward. "Nobody's asking you to stay silent. We're asking you to let the proper channels work. The Justice Department is investigating. Internal Affairs is investigating. Let them do their jobs. Sir, those proper channels have been failing people for years. That's what my report documents. Complaint after complaint dismissed or buried. How many more people need to be mistreated before we acknowledge the system isn't working?" A 3-star general across the table shook his head. "You're a military officer, General Carter. Your job is to serve this country, not to wade into political controversies about domestic law enforcement. Something in Denise snapped, though her voice remained controlled. My job is to uphold my oath to the Constitution. Last time I checked, the Constitution applies to everyone, including how police treat citizens. Or does my oath have an expiration date when things get politically inconvenient? The room fell silent for a moment. Secretary Patterson sighed. Denise, I'm not trying to silence you. I'm trying to protect you. Do you understand what's going to happen if you testify? The police unions will come after you. Political opponents will paint you as divisive. Your career, everything you've built, could be finished. Maybe my career needs to be finished if the price of keeping it is staying quiet about injustice. That's easy to say now. But, sir, I've been shot at defending this country. I've lost soldiers under my command. I've made decisions that kept me awake for years afterward. Don't tell me what's easy or hard. This is hard, but it's right. General Raymond Hayes, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. She's not wrong, Mr. Secretary. If we can't support one of our own generals standing up for basic civil rights, what message does that send? Admiral Stevens wasn't having it. It sends the message that we're picking sides in a domestic political fight. That's not our role. It's not political to say that people shouldn't be mistreated by police, Denise countered. It's not political to want accountability when officers abuse their power. Those are just basic principles of justice. The meeting went on for 2 more hours. Arguments were made from all sides. Some officials supported her courage. Others worried about the consequences. A few seemed more concerned about headlines and political fallout than about the actual issues she was raising. Finally, Secretary Patterson stood. General Carter, we're not going to order you not to testify. We can't, but we're strongly advising you to reconsider. Think about your family. Think about your career. Think about whether one traffic stop is worth destroying everything you've worked for. Denise stood as well, meeting his eyes. Sir, with respect, this isn't about one traffic stop. It's about 47 traffic stops by one officer. It's about 247 complaints at one precinct. It's about every service member and military family who deserves to be treated with dignity by the communities they serve. If I don't stand up for that, what have I really been fighting for all these years? She left the Pentagon that evening feeling both liberated and terrified. She had essentially told the military's top leadership that she was going to testify regardless of their concerns. There would be consequences for that defiance even if they couldn't officially punish her for exercising her rights. At home, her family had gathered. Her husband had called their adult children, both of whom had driven in from out of state. Her son was a lawyer, her daughter a teacher. They sat in the living room looking at their mother with a mixture of pride and worry. Mom, we support you, her daughter said, but we're scared for you. The things people are saying online, the threats, I'm handling the threats, Denise assured her. The Pentagon has provided additional security. Her son leaned forward. That's not what she means, Mom. We're scared of what this is going to cost you emotionally. You're taking on the police unions, politicians, the whole system. That's a heavy burden. I know it is. So why not let someone else carry it? You've done your part by reporting it. Let civil rights organizations take it from here. Denise looked at her children, these 2 people she had raised to stand up for what was right. Do you remember when you were kids and I had to deploy overseas? Remember what I told you about why I served? Her daughter nodded. You said you fought so that we could live in a country that stood for justice and freedom. Exactly. So how can I tell you that I fought for those values over there but won't fight for them right here at home? What kind of message does that send? That justice only matters when it's convenient? That we only stand up when it's safe? Her husband took her hand. Nobody's questioning your courage, honey. We just don't want to lose you to this fight. You won't lose me. I'll still be here. I might not have my career, but you'll have me. Are you really prepared for that? Her son asked. To walk away from the military? The question hung in the air. Denise had spent 25 years building her career. She had sacrificed so much to reach the rank of 2-star general. The idea of losing it all was terrifying, but the alternative was worse. If it comes to that, yes, I'm prepared. Because 25 years from now, I want to look back and know that I stood for something that mattered. I don't want to look back and wonder if I could have made a difference but chose comfort instead. The next few days were a whirlwind of preparation. She worked with the House Judiciary Committee staff to refine her testimony. She practiced her statement, refining every word. She anticipated hostile questions and prepared measured responses. But the most important preparation was mental. She meditated, prayed, went for long runs to clear her head. She needed to be centered, focused, unshakable when she faced the cameras and the committee. 3 days before the hearing, she received an unexpected phone call. It was from Police Chief David Harrison from a department in another state entirely. "General Carter, I wanted to reach out before your testimony. I've read your report." Denise braced herself for another criticism. "I want you to know that there are some of us in law enforcement who appreciate what you're doing. We've been trying to push for reforms in our own departments, and it's an uphill battle. Having someone with your credibility speaking out, it helps us." She was surprised. "Thank you, Chief. I wasn't sure how law enforcement would respond. We're not all like Mitchum. Most of us got into this job to help people, to serve our communities. But the culture in some departments, the way the unions protect bad officers, it makes it hard for good cops to do their jobs properly. Your voice might help change that." After they hung up, Denise felt a spark of hope. Maybe this wasn't just about fighting against something. Maybe it was also about fighting for something. For the police officers who wanted to do right but were trapped in a corrupt system. More calls came in. A veterans organization offered to provide security during her testimony. A civil rights attorney offered free legal support if she faced retaliation. A police reform advocacy group asked if they could use her report in their campaigns. She was building a coalition without even trying. The story had resonated with people across different communities, different professions, different backgrounds, but the opposition was organizing too. The police union announced they would hold a press conference the morning of her testimony, calling her biased and dangerous. Political commentators on conservative networks were running segments questioning her motives. Online harassment intensified, with people digging into her past looking for anything to discredit her. Someone leaked her home address, and she had to take additional security precautions. Her husband received threatening calls at his workplace. It was ugly and getting uglier. The night before the hearing, Denise couldn't sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, running through her testimony one more time in her head. Her husband stirred next to her. "You're not sleeping." "No." "Nervous?" "Terrified," she admitted. "What if I mess this up? What if I say something wrong and it undermines everything?" He rolled over to face her. "You're one of the most articulate, composed people I've ever known. You've briefed presidents and foreign leaders. You've given orders under enemy fire. This is just a hearing." "This is everything," she corrected. "This is the moment where I either make a difference or become a cautionary tale about military officers who should have stayed in their lane. You're already making a difference." The Justice Department investigation, the media coverage. The hearing room was packed beyond capacity. Every seat was filled with journalists, civil rights advocates, police union representatives, military personnel, and ordinary citizens who had somehow managed to get a pass. Camera crews lined the back wall, their lenses focused on the witness table where Denise would sit. The atmosphere felt electric, charged with anticipation and tension. People whispered to each other, checked their phones, shuffled papers. Outside, protesters from both sides held signs. Some read "Justice for General Carter" and "Police Accountability Now." Others said "Back the Blue" and "Stop attacking our heroes." Denise sat in an anteroom waiting to be called. Her hands were folded calmly in her lap, but inside her heart was racing. A congressional staffer poked her head in. "General Carter, we're ready for you in 5 minutes." "Thank you." She stood, checking her uniform one last time in the mirror. Every button was perfect. Every crease was sharp. She looked like exactly what she was. A disciplined military officer who had earned the right to be taken seriously. The committee chairman, Representative Douglas Mitchell, gavelled the hearing to order. His voice boomed through the sound system. "This hearing of the House Judiciary Committee will come to order. We are here today to examine issues of police accountability and civil rights in the context of a recent incident involving Major General Denise Carter of the United States Army." Denise walked into the hearing room, and the murmur of conversation immediately quieted. All eyes were on her as she made her way to the witness table. She could feel the weight of those stares, some supportive, some skeptical, all intensely curious. She sat down, adjusted the microphone, and waited. Chairman Mitchell leaned forward. "General Carter, thank you for being here today. Before we begin with questions, you'll have an opportunity to provide an opening statement. Please proceed." Denise looked out at the sea of faces, at the cameras that would carry her words to millions of people watching at home. This was her moment. She took a breath and began. Chairman Mitchell, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Major General Denise Carter. I have served in the United States Army for 25 years. I am a West Point graduate. I have commanded troops in combat zones in Iraq and Afghanistan. I have been wounded in service to this country 3 times, earning 3 Purple Hearts. I tell you this not to boast, but to establish my credibility and my commitment to serving the values this nation represents. Her voice was clear, steady, commanding. Years of briefing senior leaders had taught her how to project authority without aggression. 3 weeks ago, I was pulled over by a police officer during a routine drive home from work. Within minutes, despite providing proper identification including my military credentials, despite complying with every instruction, despite remaining calm and respectful, I was handcuffed and forced to the ground on a public street. The officer treated me not as a 2-star general, not as a decorated combat veteran, but as a criminal unworthy of basic dignity. She paused, letting that sink in. This was humiliating. It was frightening. It was wrong. But I am not here today simply to complain about my own treatment. I am here because my investigation revealed that my experience was not unique. It was part of a systematic pattern of misconduct that has been allowed to continue unchecked for years. She opened her folder and referenced her report. The officer who arrested me, along with 11 others in his precinct, has a documented history of aggressive treatment toward people of color. Over 5 years, this precinct received 247 formal complaints. Only 18 resulted in any disciplinary action. The others were dismissed, buried, or resolved with meaningless counseling that changed nothing. Representatives on the committee were leaning forward now, paying close attention. Even the ones who had been expected to oppose her seemed engaged. I am not here to attack all police officers. I am not anti-law enforcement. I believe deeply in the rule of law and the importance of police in maintaining public safety. My father was a police officer. I know the difficulties and dangers of that profession. This acknowledgement was strategic. She needed to show she understood nuance, that she wasn't painting with a broad brush. But I also believe that police, like military personnel, must be held to the highest standards of conduct. In the military, when a soldier commits misconduct, we investigate thoroughly and hold them accountable. We don't circle the wagons. We don't protect bad actors out of misplaced loyalty. We recognize that one soldier's misconduct damages the entire unit's credibility and effectiveness. She looked directly at the committee members. The same principle must apply to law enforcement. Good police officers suffer when bad officers are protected. Community trust erodes. Public safety becomes harder. Everyone loses except the officers who should never have been wearing a badge in the first place. A few representatives nodded slightly. She was making headway. I am proposing 3 specific reforms based on my findings. First, independent civilian oversight boards with real investigative authority and the power to recommend termination. Internal affairs investigating their own colleagues has proven insufficient. She could see some committee members, particularly the more conservative ones, starting to look uncomfortable. But she pressed on. Second, mandatory bias training that goes beyond checking a box. Real substantive training that challenges officers to examine their own assumptions and prejudices. Training that includes diverse perspectives and is regularly updated. Third, a national database tracking officers with sustained complaints. Currently, officers fired from one department can simply move to another. This must end. If a doctor or lawyer loses their license for misconduct, they can't just practice in the next state over. Police should be held to the same standard. She closed her folder and spoke directly to the committee. I understand these proposals will face resistance. Change always does. But I ask you to consider the alternative. How many more viral videos of police misconduct do we need to see? How many more families need to experience what I experienced? How many more communities need to lose trust in the people sworn to protect them? Her voice grew more passionate, though still controlled. I took an oath to support and defend the Constitution. That oath includes defending the civil rights that Constitution guarantees. I cannot fulfill my oath by staying silent when I have evidence of systematic injustice. I cannot serve this country honorably while ignoring the mistreatment of its citizens. She made eye contact with different committee members as she concluded. Some People have suggested I should have kept quiet, should have let others handle this, should have protected my career above all else. But what kind of leader would I be if I only stood up for justice when it was convenient? What kind of officer would I be if I valued my own comfort over doing what's right? There was absolute silence in the room. You could hear the soft whir of cameras, the occasional shuffle of paper, but no one spoke. I am here today not as a victim seeking sympathy, but as a witness to systematic failure, and as an advocate for change. I am here because I have a platform that many others don't have, and I refuse to waste that platform by staying silent. She took a breath and delivered her final line. Thank you for your time and attention. I'm ready to answer your questions. The room erupted in applause from the gallery section. Chairman Mitchell had to gavel for order several times before the clapping subsided. Thank you, General Carter, for that powerful statement. We'll now proceed to questions from committee members. I'll recognize the ranking member first. Representative Sarah Chen, a progressive Democrat, smiled warmly. General Carter, thank you for your courage in coming here today. Can you speak to the psychological impact of your experience, particularly as a Black woman who has achieved such distinguished military rank? Denise nodded. Representative Chen, the impact was profound. I've faced enemy combatants. I've been in firefights. But in those situations, I knew who the threat was. Being treated as a threat by someone who should have been protecting me, being treated as less than human despite my service and rank. That cuts differently. It makes you question whether your achievements matter at all if your skin color can override them in seconds. A conservative Republican, Representative Tom Bradford, took a different approach. General Carter, while your experience was certainly unfortunate, aren't you using your platform to unfairly demonize law enforcement as a whole? Don't you think your testimony today will make police officers' jobs harder and potentially more dangerous? Denise had expected this question. Representative Bradford, with respect, I disagree with your premise. I'm not demonizing law enforcement. I'm identifying specific documented problems that need to be addressed. Good police officers want bad officers removed from their ranks. They know that misconduct by one officer makes every officer less safe. My testimony should make it easier for good officers to do their jobs because it might help restore community trust that has been damaged by officers like the one who arrested me. Bradford pressed harder. But you're advocating for civilian oversight boards. Don't you think police professionals are better equipped to judge other police officers than civilians who don't understand the realities of law enforcement? The backlash hit like a hurricane within hours of Denise's testimony ending. The police union's press conference was brutal. Their president, a weathered veteran named Frank Castellano, stood behind a podium surrounded by uniformed officers. His face was red with anger as he read from a prepared statement. General Carter's testimony today was nothing more than a politically motivated attack on law enforcement. She has taken one incident, one officer's alleged mistake, and used her military credentials to wage war against police officers across this country. Her reckless accusations will lead to officers being second-guessed in split-second decisions. Her proposed reforms will handcuff police and embolden criminals. And we believe she has dishonored her uniform by using her military position to push a divisive political agenda. The officers standing behind him nodded in agreement. The message was clear. Denise had crossed a line and they were coming for her. Within an hour, the hashtag #StopAttackingPolice was trending on social media. Conservative commentators were having a field day. She got what she deserved during that traffic stop, one radio host declared. If she had just complied without attitude, nothing would have happened. But no, she had to play the race card and turn it into a federal case. Cable news shows ran panels debating her testimony. Some praised her courage. Others accused her of divisiveness. The country seemed split right down the middle, and the divide was getting uglier by the hour. Denise watched some of the coverage from her Pentagon office, her jaw tightening with each false characterization of her words and intentions. She had been clear about supporting good officers while demanding accountability for bad ones. But nuance didn't survive in the outrage machine of modern media. Her assistant knocked on the door. Ma'am, you need to see this. She pulled up a conservative news website where a columnist had written a scathing piece titled, General Carter's Betrayal of Law Enforcement. The article twisted her words, selectively quoted her testimony, and painted her as anti-police and anti-American. But that wasn't the worst part. The article included her home address, her husband's workplace, even the school where her daughter taught. It was clearly intended to facilitate harassment. Within hours, the harassment came. Her office phone rang constantly with angry callers. Emails flooded her inbox, many containing racial slurs and threats. Someone spray-painted traitor on her driveway overnight. Her daughter called crying. "Mom, someone showed up at my school asking for me." The principal had to call security. "I'm scared." Denise felt rage and guilt war inside her. She had known there would be backlash, but she hadn't fully anticipated how it would affect her family. "Take a few days off," she told her daughter. "Stay with friends." I'm handling this, but was she handling it? The threats were escalating. Her husband couldn't go to work without protesters showing up. Their home had to have private security around the clock. The Pentagon's response was mixed and maddeningly bureaucratic. Officially, they supported her right to testify. Unofficially, she was being frozen out. Meetings she should have been included in suddenly didn't have room for her. Projects she was leading were quietly reassigned. No one said she was being punished, but the message was clear. She had become a problem. General Hayes pulled her aside one afternoon. "Denise, I'm going to be straight with you. There are people upstairs who want you gone. They're looking for any excuse to push you into early retirement. For telling the truth? For causing political headaches. The secretary is getting calls from senators and representatives demanding answers about why a military officer is involving herself in domestic law enforcement issues. He's under pressure to do something about you. I testified before Congress at their invitation. I followed all proper procedures. I broke no regulations, I know that. You know that. But politics doesn't care about technicalities. They need the story to go away. And the easiest way is for you to go away." Denise felt the walls closing in. She had expected opposition, but she hadn't expected her own institution to turn on her so quickly. Meanwhile, Officer Mitchum's lawyer had gone on the offensive. He filed a defamation lawsuit against Denise, claiming she had destroyed his client's reputation with false accusations. The lawsuit was clearly designed to intimidate her into silence, and it was working on some level. Her legal bills were mounting. The Army provided some legal support, but not for the defamation suit, which they considered a personal matter. She had to hire a private attorney, draining her savings. Her husband found her at the kitchen table one night, surrounded by legal documents and bills. "This is getting out of control," he said softly. "Maybe it's time to step back, let this die down." "I can't, why not?" "You've made your point. You testified. The investigation is happening. What more can you do?" She looked up at him with exhausted eyes. "If I back down now, it sends a message that anyone who speaks up will be destroyed. It tells every other person who's been mistreated that there's no point in fighting, because the system will crush them. I can't let that be my legacy." He sat down next to her, taking her hand. "I'm worried about you. You're not sleeping. You barely eat. The stress is killing you. And for what? So you can be a martyr? I'm not trying to be a martyr. I'm trying to make things better. But at what cost? Our daughter is scared to go to work. I can't leave the house without being harassed. We've had to hire security. Our savings are disappearing. And you're being pushed out of the career you've dedicated your life to. When is enough enough?" She didn't have a good answer to that. The next day brought a new low. A video surfaced online, heavily edited to make it look like she had been aggressive during the traffic stop. The editing removed all context, all of Mitchum's aggressive behavior, and made it seem like she had provoked the entire incident. The video went viral among people who wanted to believe she was lying. "See, she was resisting," they crowed on social media. "She got what was coming to her." Never mind that the full unedited footage clearly showed the truth. The edited version fit a narrative that certain people wanted to believe, so that's what they shared. Denise watched the misinformation spread like wildfire, unable to stop it. Fact-checkers debunked the edited video, but their corrections never reached as many people as the original lie. She received a call from a veteran she had served with years ago. He was blunt. "Denise, I'm disappointed in you. I thought you were better than this race-baiting nonsense. You've lost a lot of respect from people who used to admire you. Did you watch my actual testimony or just the clips on the news? I saw enough. You're dividing people instead of uniting them. I'm trying to unite people around the principle that everyone deserves equal treatment under the law. How is that divisive?" But he had already hung up. These personal betrayals hurt worse than the public attacks. People she had served with, bled with, trusted with her life, were turning against her based on distorted information and political tribalism. Even some black colleagues and civil rights advocates criticized her approach. "You're being too respectful," one activist told her. "You're bending over backward to say you support police. You need to be more forceful in condemning the institution. I'm trying to build bridges, not burn them. Bridges with people who want you destroyed? That's not strategy, that's naivety." She was being attacked from all sides. Too radical for conservatives. Too moderate for progressives. Too political for the military. Too military for civilians. The isolation was crushing. 3 weeks after her testimony, she received official notification that she was being reassigned. Not fired, not forced to retire, but moved to a position with no real authority or purpose. It was a bureaucratic way of neutralizing her without creating another headline. She sat in her Pentagon office for the last time, boxing up personal items. Photos of her with troops in combat zones, commendations and awards, a flag that had flown over her unit in Iraq. General Hayes stopped by. "I'm sorry, Denise. I fought this, but I was overruled. I know. It's not your fault. For what it's worth, I think you did the right thing. History will prove that. History doesn't pay my legal bills or protect my family from harassment." He didn't have a response to that. That evening, exhausted and defeated, Denise sat with her family in their living room. Her daughter and son had both come home worried about her. "Mom, you don't have to keep doing this," her son said gently. "You can drop the lawsuit defense, issue a statement saying you're moving on, and let this fade away." She wanted to. God, she wanted to just make it all stop. The stress was unbearable. The costs were too high. The personal toll was destroying her. But then she thought about the people in her report. The ones who had been mistreated and ignored. The ones who didn't have her platform or resources. The ones who had given up because fighting seemed hopeless. "I can't," she said quietly. "Not yet. Why not?" Her daughter asked, tears in her eyes. "What more do you have to give?" Denise looked at her children. "Because if I quit now, I'm teaching you that the cost of doing the right thing is too high. I'm teaching you that when things get hard, you should fold. And I didn't raise you that way." Her husband pulled her close. "We're with you. Whatever it takes, whatever happens, we're with you," she cried then for the first time since the whole ordeal began. All the anger, fear. 4 months after her testimony, the first shoe dropped. The Justice Department announced their findings from an independent investigation into Officer Mitchum's precinct. Denise was in her new Pentagon office, a small windowless room that felt more like exile than reassignment. When she got the call from a federal prosecutor, General Carter, "I wanted you to hear this before it goes public. We're filing civil rights charges against 3 officers from the precinct, including Derek Mitchum. The evidence you provided was crucial to our case." She closed her eyes, feeling a wave of vindication and exhaustion. "What charges specifically?" "Deprivation of rights under color of law, falsifying police reports, conspiracy to obstruct justice. If convicted, they're looking at significant prison time." After the call ended, Denise sat quietly for a moment. This was what she had fought for, but it felt less triumphant than she had imagined. Mostly, she just felt tired. The news broke an hour later. The press conference was carried live on every major network. The U.S. Attorney stood at a podium, flanked by FBI agents and Justice Department officials. "Today, we are announcing federal charges against 3 police officers who engaged in a pattern of civil rights violations spanning several years. Our investigation uncovered systematic misconduct, including targeting individuals based on race, falsifying reports to cover up excessive force, and obstructing internal investigations." He detailed the charges methodically. Officer Mitchum was the primary defendant, but 2 of his colleagues were also charged for their roles in covering up incidents and intimidating complainants. "We want to be clear," the U.S. Attorney continued. "This is not an attack on law enforcement. This is about holding accountable those who abuse the authority we entrust to them. The vast majority of police officers serve honorably. These 3 did not." Within hours, the police chief announced his resignation. His statement was brief and defensive, but the message was clear. He was taking responsibility for failing to address the problems in his department. The mayor held her own press conference, promising comprehensive reforms and acknowledging that the department had failed its community. It was political theater to some extent, but it was also progress. Denise watched it all unfold from her small office, feeling a complex mix of emotions. Justice was happening, but at what cost? And was it enough? Her phone started buzzing with calls from reporters, civil rights organizations, and people she hadn't heard from in months. Everyone wanted her reaction, her statement, her victory lap. She ignored most of them and called her husband instead. "Did you see the news?" "I'm watching it now," he said. "How do you feel?" "I don't know, relieved? Angry that it took this long? Sad that it had to come to this in the first place? You should feel proud. This happened because you had the courage to speak up. Maybe. Or maybe it would have happened anyway once the investigation started. Don't do that. Don't minimize what you did. Those officers are being held accountable because you refused to let this be swept under the rug." She knew he was right, but accepting credit felt uncomfortable. This wasn't about her personal victory. It was supposed to be about systemic change. The next few weeks brought more developments. Other jurisdictions, seeing what had happened in Mitchum's case, began reviewing their own complaint procedures. 3 nearby police departments announced new oversight protocols. 2 states introduced legislation based on recommendations from Denise's report. The conversation had shifted. Police reform was no longer a fringe idea. It was being discussed seriously in state houses and police academies across the country. Denise received an unexpected invitation that surprised her more than anything else. A police academy in Colorado wanted her to speak to their graduating class of recruits. The commander of the academy had read her testimony and believed her message needed to be heard by future officers. She hesitated. The backlash from police unions had been brutal. Would she even be safe walking into a room full of police recruits? But General Hayes encouraged her. "This is exactly the kind of bridge building you talked about in your testimony. These are officers who haven't been corrupted by bad culture yet. You could influence an entire generation." She accepted the invitation. The drive to Colorado felt longer than any deployment overseas. When she arrived at the academy, she half expected protests or hostility. Instead, the commander greeted her warmly and escorted her to the auditorium. 200 recruits filled the seats, their young faces curious and attentive. Some looked skeptical. Others seemed genuinely interested in what she had to say. Denise stood at the podium and looked out at them. These were people who had chosen a difficult profession, who wanted to serve their communities. They deserved honesty. "I'm not here to tell you that all cops are bad," she began. "I'm here to tell you that you have the power to be better than the officers who came before you. You have the power to change the culture from within." She told them her story not with anger but with purpose. She explained how Officer Mitchum's actions had damaged not just her, but the reputation of every officer who wore the badge honorably. When you put on that uniform, you're not just representing yourself. You're representing every officer in this country, and when one of you abuses that authority, all of you suffer the consequences. Communities lose trust. Good officers become targets of resentment. Everyone loses. She could see some of them nodding, taking notes, really listening. "I'm asking you to be courageous in a different way than you might expect. Yes, you'll need physical courage to face danger, but you'll also need moral courage to stand up when you see a fellow officer doing something wrong. You'll need the courage to report misconduct, even when it makes you unpopular. You'll need the courage to treat every person with dignity, even when they're disrespectful to you." A hand went up in the audience. A young woman, probably in her mid-20s. "Ma'am, what do we do if we report misconduct and nothing happens? What if the system protects bad officers?" Denise appreciated the honesty of the question. That's the hardest situation. But here's what I learned through my experience. You have to keep trying. Document everything. Build alliances with other officers who share your values. And if your department won't listen, there are external resources, oversight boards, and federal authorities who will. She paused, then added, and sometimes, you have to be willing to walk away from a corrupt department and find one that aligns with your values. I know that's not easy, especially if you need the job. But staying in a toxic culture and participating in misconduct makes you part of the problem. After her speech, several recruits came up to talk to her. One young man who was black shook her hand with tears in his eyes. "General Carter, I almost quit the academy after what happened to you. I thought, if they can treat a general like that, what chance do I have? But your testimony inspired me to stay and be the change. Thank you." Denise hugged him, feeling emotion well up. "You're exactly why I fought this battle. Officers like you are the future. Don't let anyone take that away." The trip to Colorado was the first of several. Other police academies reached out. So did veteran organizations, civil rights groups, and community forums. Denise found herself becoming an unlikely voice in the police reform movement, someone who could speak to both law enforcement and communities of color. Meanwhile, the legal proceedings moved forward. Officer Mitchum's trial was set for 6 months out. His lawyers tried every delay tactic possible, but the evidence was overwhelming. The body cam footage, the pattern of complaints, the testimony from other victims, all of it painted a damning picture. 2 of the other charged officers took plea deals, agreeing to testify against Mitchum in exchange for reduced sentences. They admitted to helping cover up incidents and intimidating complainants. Their testimony revealed just how deep the corruption went. The 3rd officer, refusing to admit wrongdoing, faced trial alongside Mitchum. Denise was called to testify at the trial. Walking into that courtroom felt different than testifying before Congress. This was more personal. Mitchum would be sitting there forced to face her again. When she took the stand, she kept her eyes on the prosecutor, refusing to give Mitchum the satisfaction of seeing any fear or uncertainty in her face. The prosecutor walked her through the night of the traffic stop, asking her to describe every detail. She did so calmly, professionally, letting the facts speak for themselves. Mitchum's lawyer tried to rattle her during cross-examination. "General Carter, isn't it true that you used your military position to orchestrate a campaign against my client?" "No, that's not true. You compiled a report on his activities, reached out to his other victims, and coordinated with civil rights organizations. Sounds like a campaign to me. I documented evidence of systematic misconduct and provided it to appropriate authorities. That's not a campaign. That's called accountability." The lawyer tried several more angles, suggesting she had been uncooperative during the stop, that she had an agenda against police, that she was exaggerating what happened. Denise deflected each attack with practiced ease. When she stepped down from the witness stand, she felt lighter. She had told her truth under oath, and nothing Mitchum's lawyer said could change the facts. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Other victims testified about their experiences. 18 months after that traffic stop changed her life, Denise Carter stood in the East Room of the White House, surrounded by family, colleagues, and civil rights leaders. The president was about to award her the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the nation's highest civilian honor. It felt surreal. From being handcuffed on a suburban street to standing in the White House seemed like an impossible journey, yet here she was. The president approached the podium, and the room fell silent. Major General Denise Carter's story could have been just another viral video, another moment of outrage that faded with the next news cycle. But she refused to let it be forgotten. She refused to let injustice hide behind bureaucracy and institutional protections. The president's words echoed through the historic room. General Carter took her personal pain and transformed it into a catalyst for change. She didn't just demand accountability for what happened to her. She exposed a system that had failed countless others. And most importantly, she offered solutions, not just criticism. Denise stood at attention, her emotions carefully controlled. She had learned long ago how to keep her face neutral even when her heart was racing. "This medal is not just for her courage in speaking out," the president continued. "It's for her courage in staying engaged, in working with law enforcement to find better ways forward, in refusing to be silenced by threats and backlash. She showed us that real heroism isn't just battlefield valor. It's standing up for what's right when everything and everyone is telling you to sit down." The president placed the medal around her neck, and the room erupted in applause. Denise shook his hand, then stepped to the microphone to give her acceptance speech. She had prepared remarks, but looking out at the gathered crowd, she decided to speak from her heart instead. "Thank you, Mr. President, for this incredible honor, but I want to be clear about something. I didn't do this alone. This medal represents every person who filed a complaint that was ignored, every officer who spoke up about misconduct and was ostracized, every family member who supported someone fighting for justice, every community activist who has been demanding accountability for decades." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "When people ask me if the cost was worth it, if I'd do it again knowing what I'd lose, my answer is always the same. I didn't lose anything that mattered. Yes, my career trajectory changed. Yes, I faced threats and harassment. Yes, there were dark days when I wanted to quit. But what I gained was far more valuable." She looked directly at the cameras broadcasting the ceremony. "I gained the knowledge that I stood up when it mattered. I gained relationships with people fighting for justice across this country. I gained the respect of my children, who saw their mother live her values even when it was hard. Those things, you can't put a medal on them, but they're worth more than anything the military ever gave me. Her voice grew more passionate. Real heroism isn't dramatic moments on a battlefield, though those matter too. Real heroism is getting up every day and choosing to do the right thing when it would be easier not to. It's teachers working in underfunded schools. It's nurses caring for the sick. It's police officers who refuse to look away when their colleagues do wrong. It's ordinary people doing extraordinary things because they believe in something bigger than themselves. The audience was completely focused on her words. My handcuffs that night became a symbol, but symbols aren't enough. We need action. And I'm proud to say that action is happening. 23 states have passed police reform legislation in the past year. 78 police departments have implemented new oversight procedures. 300 police academies have revised their training to include bias awareness and de-escalation. She smiled slightly. That's not because of me. That's because of thousands of people who were already fighting this fight long before anyone knew my name. I just happened to have a platform that amplified their voices. Denise looked at her family sitting in the front row. Her husband wiping tears from his eyes. Her children beaming with pride. They had sacrificed so much for her to take this stand. To my family, thank you for standing with me when I was too stubborn to quit. To my fellow service members, thank you for reminding me what we're really fighting for. To the activists and organizers who have been in these trenches for years, thank you for welcoming me into your ranks and teaching me how to fight effectively. She took a breath before her closing words. And to anyone watching who has been mistreated, who has felt powerless, who has wondered if speaking up makes a difference, it does. Your voice matters. Your story matters. And when you find the courage to tell that story, even when you're terrified of the consequences, you change the world a little bit, and enough little changes eventually become a revolution. The applause was deafening. Denise stepped back from the microphone, touched the medal around her neck, and felt a sense of completion. Not an ending, because the work would never truly be done, but a milestone, a marker of how far she'd come and how far the country had come with her. After the ceremony, there was a reception. Denise found herself surrounded by well-wishers, but her attention was drawn to a group of young people in one corner. They wore matching t-shirts with her image and the words, "Stand up, speak out." She walked over to them, curious. One young woman, probably in her early 20s, stepped forward nervously. "General Carter, we're from a youth organization that works on criminal justice reform. Your story inspired us to start this group. We wanted to thank you." Denise felt emotion welling up. "What does your group do?" "We educate young people about their rights during police encounters. We connect families with legal resources when they experience misconduct. We organize peaceful protests and dialogue sessions between police and community members. We're trying to build the future you fought for." This, more than the medal, more than the White House ceremony, was what mattered. The next generation was picking up the work and carrying it forward. "Thank you," Denise said sincerely. "You're the real heroes." Later that evening, back at her hotel, Denise sat with her family and a few close friends. They ordered room service and celebrated quietly, away from the cameras and crowds. General Hayes, who had flown in for the ceremony, raised his glass. To Denise, who taught us all what integrity looks like even when it costs something. They toasted and conversation flowed easily. Stories were shared, memories laughed about, future plans discussed. Denise's daughter pulled her aside at one point. "Mom, I need to tell you something. Remember when this all started and I was scared? I asked you to stop? I remember. I was wrong. Watching you fight this battle, seeing you refuse to back down even when things got terrible, it changed my life. I left teaching and went back to school for law. I'm going to be a civil rights attorney because of you." Denise hugged her daughter tightly, tears flowing freely now. "I'm so proud of you. I learned from the best." The next morning, Denise had one final appointment before flying home. She visited the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture, which had requested some items for their exhibit on civil rights in the 21st century. She donated the dress uniform she had worn during her congressional testimony, the report she had compiled on police misconduct, and several personal items from that period of her life. As she looked at these artifacts being carefully preserved for future generations, She thought about how strange it was that her worst day had become part of history. Those handcuffs, that humiliation, that moment on the pavement, they would teach future generations about the ongoing fight for equality and justice. A curator walked with her through the exhibit. General Carter, your story fits into a long tradition of Black Americans using their positions and platforms to challenge injustice. From Frederick Douglass to Rosa Parks to you, the through line is clear. Change requires people willing to risk personal comfort for collective progress. I'm not sure I belong in that company, Denise said humbly. History will decide that. But I think you do. You showed that even in the 21st century, even after all the progress we've made, there's still work to be done. And you showed how to do that work effectively. Denise flew home that afternoon, exhausted but content. The medal sat in her carry-on bag, heavy with symbolism and significance. When she walked into her house, everything looked exactly the same as when she'd left. Same furniture, same family photos on the walls, same comfortable chaos of a home well lived in. But she was different. The woman who had been handcuffed on that street 18 months ago would barely recognize who she had become. She had discovered reserves of strength and courage she didn't know she possessed. She had learned that standing alone was sometimes necessary, even when it was terrifying. She had found her voice and used it to amplify others who had been silenced. Her husband wrapped her in a hug. How does it feel to be a Medal of Freedom recipient? Honestly, it feels like I can finally rest. Not stop working, but rest. The weight I've been carrying, the responsibility to get this right, it feels lighter now. You got it right. You got it more than right. Over the following weeks, life slowly returned to a new normal. Denise was promoted to 3-star general, a vindication after being sidelined months earlier. Her new position gave her oversight of military-civilian relations,